In the second half of the show, we'll be talking about designing creative spaces. Hello, I'm Shannon Skinner, and this is Extraordinary Women TV. My next guest is Heather Dubbeldam. She is an architect. She's the principal of Dubbeldam Design Architects. You're going to meet her in a moment. Later in the segment, before we take a break, I'll have my regular Good to Know Minute when I ask my guests for their top success tip, and you'll hear Heather's. Well, Heather, it is so nice to have you here on the show today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. Now, an architect, it's not often that you get to meet a female architect. I know that the construction industry is a very male-dominated industry, and so thank you for being here today. So this is really great. What does an architect do?
Well, an architect designs buildings, whether it be the inside or the outside of the building. There's really no distinction for us. We design the complete building, from homes all the way up to huge buildings, hospitals, condominiums, office buildings. Anything.
Because in an earlier conversation that you and I had, that you had mentioned to me that there seems to be either a misunderstanding or not enough knowledge or lack of knowledge or awareness of what the role of an architect actually is when it comes to construction.
Well, it's actually very creative and technical at the same time.
Right.
And I think there's not that many disciplines like that out there, but creative, I guess, at the beginning of a project when you're trying to come up with the ideas for how to make all the spaces and fit everything that needs to fit in a building and make it fit on the site and deal with what materials you're working with and all the circulation, and also very technical.
Right.
To make sure that everything doesn't leak, and we work with a lot of consultants, engineers to make sure things stand up, and I'm kind of oversimplifying the process, but there's a very, very technical side to it as well. So we're kind of constantly flipping back and forth between the creative and the technical. Left brain, right brain.
So why are there not that many women in the architect field?
Well, I think that's changing.
Yeah.
Apparently there's at least 50%, if not more than 50% of women in architecture schools. I think that based on the fact that the industry is very demanding, it's very intense, that some women go on to pursue other creative disciplines. Right. And maybe don't stay within the industry. But I know that in my sort of genre, my age group, there's quite a few women architects, and that is slowly changing. The industry's changing over, but the construction side of it is primarily men, right, building the buildings.
Yeah. What would a sort of a typical kind of day look like for you on the job?
Well, it's a little crazy. I would say at least every second day we go to a construction site, one of our projects that's under construction in the morning, yeah, and walk through the site with the contractor, deal with any issues that have come up. There's always things that come up. It's a real problem-solving exercise. And then we go back to the office and try and sort through all of that. And then there's other projects that are in the design phase that we're working through, and then other projects that are finished, and we're trying to help people with last-minute details. And so we're kind of, every project that we have is at a different phase. So we're jumping around between different projects and different activities. So it's a little intense. At the end of the day, it's 6 o'clock. We're like, oh my gosh, we're not done yet. We have a few more things to finish. So yeah, it's a little crazy.
So it's a bit, there's a lot of pressure then.
Yeah. When projects are under construction, there's timelines that need to be met. So that's really when there's the most amount of pressure. Or if you're working on a project that has very, very tight deadlines for design as well. So yeah, it's pretty, the timelines are always compressed. Everybody wants everything much faster than we can deliver it. So
sure, and as soon as you start talking about construction, I mean, these are big budget projects that you have. I mean, you're not, these are not small design projects. I mean, you're managing a lot of money.
Well, in my practice, we're typically doing smaller projects. We're working on custom homes, we're doing condominiums, we've done a few office renovations, we've done a daycare, we're working on an apartment building right now, expanding an apartment building. And so the budgets, we're a smaller practice and we're working on smaller budget projects, but yeah, typically in the industry, they're working with hundreds of millions, if not, $1 billion.
That's what I meant, sort of more as a, budget for within the industry, itself. It's, I mean, it's one thing to, as an architect, you're managing a lot. These budgets that are bigger than if you were, say, designing a website business.
Yes,
sort of
that's
what
true.
Meant. But now I know that you're a fourth generation architect.
Yes. My father is an architect, and his father, and his father.
Is that what inspired you? Or influenced you?
I guess indirectly,
right?
Because I was always good at the maths and sciences and art,
right?
And my parents recognized that fairly early on and said, "We think that this is a discipline that you would really love." So I guess they really influenced me, and then I thought, well, let's try it out. And here I am still doing it, so I guess it's in my blood.
Is your father proud of you?
I think so, yeah. He retired, but I think he sort of he's excited about the design that we're doing and me following in his footsteps.
Now, I know that also your work and your studies particularly took you overseas, Italy, Turkey, France, Switzerland, and it influenced your creative work. How so?
Well, it's architects love seeing buildings in reality, not just photographs of buildings, but actually going to the spaces and walking through them and feeling them and being able to see all the subtle details and the quality of light and everything that's created. So being able to travel around the world and see some of the best buildings in the world firsthand is invaluable experience and informs everything that architects do. And typically they take pilgrimages, usually when they're in school or after they finish school and do a lot of traveling, or while they're in school they'll work overseas if they can. And in my case, one summer I worked in Switzerland, and there's a very clean aesthetic for buildings in Switzerland, and I think I was most influenced by the work that I did for that firm in terms of my own creative pursuits. That everything is very clean, very modern, and I think that had the greatest influence on me.
What is your favorite building in the world? Favorite design?
World?
Yeah.
That's a big question. I have a lot of favorites, actually.
Yeah? What would be some of the top?
Well, some of the classics, if you go back to ancient Rome, something like the Pantheon is like an absolutely brilliant building on so many different levels. But as far as modern buildings go, there's just so many, I wouldn't even know where to start. Just trying to think. Well, I'm a big fan of Le Corbusier's work, and that was all sort of 1920s, 1930s. I've seen a lot of his buildings. And then since then, I'm a big fan of Herzog and de Meuron. They're a Swiss firm, Swiss architecture firm. I love almost everything that they've done as well. Now,
one thing that we want to talk about too is how design how design improves people's lives. I mean, what kind of impact does design have on someone's life day to day?
I think it has a huge impact.
Right.
From the scale of a space, how high or low your ceiling is, how large it is, how much natural light there is, what materials are used, all those things that affect your feeling of well-being, as well as functional things, how easy it is to use. I mean, think about hospitals, for example, and how functional they have to be in order to provide the best care for patients. And think about if a hospital was better organized, how much time they could save, even if it's just seconds during the day, and you add that up over years and years, and how much better patient care you could get.
Saving people's lives.
Yeah.
It could make all the difference.
Yeah, really big. So I think that people don't realize that everything is designed, everything they see, whether it was intentional or not, whether it's buildings or products or whatever it is. And so all those things have an effect on us. I think mostly sort of well-being and health effects. That there's a lot of research into sick building syndrome right now, and a lot of architects have been trying to figure out ways to make their buildings more sustainable, better for the environment, using less energy, and also just healthier environments for people to live and work. So I think it has a massive impact on our day-to-day lives, live and work.
Yeah, sure. And I have noticed in my own life that I'm very much impacted by my environment, by the aesthetics, by the colors, by, if there's clutter or not clutter. I mean, it can upset you, actually.
Yeah.
And you may not even really realize it as you're working if it's not, if things aren't really organized, if you see nothing but chaos around you, it can create an inner chaos.
And that's what we find for our residential projects, that one of the things we really focus on doing is giving people the right spaces to put everything away so that there isn't that clutter. And it's funny, when our projects are posted on the internet, sometimes you get the odd comment that says, well, that's not really how those people live. Well, actually, that is the way those people live, because we've given them this environment. It's very clean, it's open, there's lots of storage, there's a real feeling of peace. You know, when you come to your home, it's restful instead of being stressful. I find the same thing, you know, if there's a little pile of something here and there that you just want to find a place for it. So that's a big part of what we do in our designs, whether it's for homes or for offices, just to try and find a way for people to cope with the stuff that they have in their lives.
So Heather, we're just going to take a quick break, and this means it's my good to know minute, and I know you've got a great success tip.
Well, when you have your own business, I think specifically in the creative industry, it really helps to have a very clear vision for your business and the perseverance to carry that through, because you can get pulled in different directions, and I think you always need to fine-tune that vision, but just stick to it and keep that kind of focus, and I think people will succeed.
Well, that's good to know. Thanks for that. Well, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, more with Heather Dubbeldam, an architect, on designing creative spaces. So stay where you are. Welcome back to the show. I'm Shannon Skinner, and I'm speaking with Heather Dubbeldam. She is an architect. In fact, she's the principal of Dubbeldam Design Architects, and we're talking about creative use of space and creative use of space. And Heather, we've got some of your photographs from some of your projects that we're going to pull up on the screen, and let's just talk about some of them, because they're so lovely, and I'd like to know and give the viewers a sense of your projects and what's possible. Okay. So maybe Erin, if you could just pull them up now. Oh, great. I love this.
So this is a house renovation in the area Cabbagetown.
Okay, great. Which
is a heritage district. So we were limited to what we could do on the front of the house. So on the back of the house is really where we have our sort of bold move, where we opened it all up to bring in lots of light, allow them to have views. We have a central staircase and a skylight up above to help bring light down. So, you know, these houses, they're old and they're narrow. So we kind of open everything up, bring lots of light in, remove walls, make the spaces more functional. In this case, it has a lot to do with natural light.
And this one?
This one was also a renovation in addition to another small Victorian house. In this case, we have a roof garden. We have a roof deck on the top at the back there. You can see those people.
Oh, right, yeah.
And there's a built-in garden up there, so they get to enjoy the outdoor space. They have a very, very small backyard. So just to kind of always be thinking about expanding the indoor space outside so that people have a little bit more living space, you know, say half of the year, 3/4 of the year.
And the next one? This is very cool.
This is a hotel room, actually, at the Gladstone Hotel. We won by competition to.
And these are all Toronto.
These are all Toronto projects.
Okay, so Gladstone Hotel.
Yeah, and they had an international competition. They invited initially 15 artisan designers to design one hotel room each. And we basically came up with the idea of, it's called Offset 411, it's room 411, of offsetting the structure of the room to create kind of a sense of a room within a room, and to support all of the different elements like the bedside tables, the desk, the bed, and then one large light fixture instead of, you know, several light fixtures all over the place. So just to kind of clean everything up and make the room feel a little bit larger than it really is.
I think we've got one more here.
This is a project in Toronto as well. And we were trying to also, I guess, employ the outdoor space to bring it in and create a really nice outdoor living space, and to divide up the space without using walls. So there's a lot of freestanding elements with views through them that are, you know, functional. That's kind of a bar element between the kitchen and the dining room.
Oh, very
so
cool.
We're using a lot of techniques to try and make the spaces feel larger than they really are when you're stuck with a limited footprint like you are in a city. Also, of course, to bring in as much natural light as possible.
It's, you know, one of the reasons that lofts are so popular, the idea of living in a loft with, you know, wide open spaces and tall ceiling, and is that one of the attractions?
I think so. Just to not be restricted by walls, and that there's a lot more flexibility in your space, that you can move it around and change it. And people like to change things around. They don't always want to have their furniture in the same place.
So, because you did say something really interesting, you said it to me, you know, when we were in an earlier discussion, in Canada, people don't really need more space, that they just need better designed space.
Yeah, I think that applies to people's homes as well as offices and retail environments, that a lot of the buildings in Toronto and other cities are original. They've been built a long time ago, and they weren't built for modern lifestyles. So if that space, within the constraints of what you have already there, if you can design it to be more functional, to flow better, then you may not need to have a bigger house or a bigger office. If things are really well designed, they just work really well. So we always take a look at that when we start a project. How much physical space? Sometimes someone will come to us and say, I want a new house and I need it to be 4,000 square feet. We say, okay, you know, where's the lot? We look at all the different constraints, and sometimes we're able to fit what they need into 3,000 square feet, but it feels a lot bigger than it really is. We use a lot of techniques to try and make the space feel bigger.
Right. Now something, and so thank you for sharing these photos with us. It's lovely, your projects. I mean, they're so interesting creatively. Now, one of the things about you in your career is that you're at that point now where, I mean, you've established yourself. You've been a successful architect for a number of years now, and now you are volunteering, or you're using your knowledge and skills in a very different way outside of your practice to give back.
I think that there's a number of different things that I'm involved with, partially to stay connected, but also to help the younger generation, or help other architects, or in some cases, like for example, I'm the co-chair of the Toronto Society of Architects, and our mandate is to promote architecture, but also to advocate for good architecture and design and good public space. So we sometimes need to step in when there's a development, not sort of specifically, more like when there's an issue that we feel that we need to address in the city, that someone needs to stand up for an issue to try and help improve public space, for example, whether it be a competition or a project that was designed to help people, which is might be cancelled. So we're kind of involved on several different levels in the city. I'm also involved with an organization called the Design Industry Advisory Committee, which is basically a think tank and a research group to help promote the strategic value of design. So design as a tool for businesses and government and all different levels, to basically help them realize that if they employ design, they could end up with much smarter business solutions. And that's actually a provincial organization, and it's has a number of different design professionals from 6 different design disciplines, all sitting on the board and contributing. So it's actually a really, really exciting environment, and they're making some really great steps for industry and manufacturing. And then I'm the director of 20 and Change, which is an organization to help promote emerging architects and designers in Canada. So we host a competition and produce publication every 2 years to showcase the work of emerging, young and emerging designers and architects, and landscape architects and urban designers as well, to just kind of help them get exposure and reach some of their goals, which was a struggle for myself when I was just starting my practice. So there was nothing like this. So we figured, myself and someone else I'm working with, we're just trying to help promote these young firms and get them a little bit further in their careers.
What is it like to work being surrounded with so many men in the building industry?
It's really interesting, actually. Early on in my career, when I was a young architect and I worked for a large architecture firm, I would go on construction sites, and I learned really quickly that the best way to negotiate through this is to really know your stuff, first of all, and to be incredibly respectful of what other people know, because this whole industry relies on teamwork. building, there's so many team players at every level. I mean, in my office, it's about teamwork and all the consultants working together, the contractor and all of the sub-trades and all the individual people helping to make this happen. So I think that being a woman, women are, I think, really good team players and good collaborators, and I think that that's a real asset that helps in the construction industry. When you go on the construction site, you don't just tell people what to do. It's a problem-solving exercise, and inevitably that's what happens almost every time. There's some problem that needs to be dealt with, and how we approach it as women, I think, is a real asset to the industry.
So do you think that that's how you gain respect from the men when you were on?
Definitely, yeah.
You respected them first and foremost, their knowledge, and
and they need to respect our knowledge as the designers of the building, but we also need to know what they do and how they do it to a certain point, so that we're speaking the same language, and we just go in there and solve problems. And so far that's worked out really well. In some cases, I had to work with other architects who had different approach on a construction site and could see what techniques works and don't work. So I kind of learned early on that being a team player and being really positive and being really respectful is a real the right approach, I think, for this industry.
Do you love what you do?
Yes, I do. Yeah, it's really demanding, so I think you really have to love it if you're going to stick with it.
Well, Heather, I have really enjoyed having you on the show today. Thank you for being here and talking about the world of an architect. It's something that I had been very curious about. So really appreciate your time and sharing your tip, and I wish you all the best with your business and your projects going forward.
Thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Well, if you are interested in more about Heather Dubbeldam and her company, Dubbeldam Design Architects, you can visit my website at extraordinarywomentv.com, where you will find her episode page, this interview, her bio, and more about her there. And of course, if you are interested in finding out more about the show and past guests, upcoming guests, you can visit the website at extraordinarywomentv.com. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm tweeting a lot about the show these days, so it's another great place to connect with me. Well, if you are interested in transforming your life, I hope these stories have inspired you. You've been watching Extraordinary Women TV. I'm Shannon Skinner. See you soon.